Have you ever wondered why people get addicted to alcohol and other beverages? This question marks the beginning of our journey into the enigma of addiction, a complex and multifaceted issue that affects millions of people worldwide. Addiction is a term that's thrown around a lot, yet is often misunderstood. It's not simply a matter of willpower or moral strength, as some might suggest. It's a complex interplay of biological, psychological, and social factors. Today, we're focusing on the addiction to alcohol and other beverages, substances that are so common and yet can cause so much damage if misused. Alcohol and beverage addiction is not a fringe issue. It's not something that happens to other people in other places. It's a concern that is woven into the fabric of our society. From the casual drinker who enjoys a glass of wine after work, to the person who can't start their day without a shot of whiskey, the spectrum of alcohol use is wide and varied. The impact of this addiction is profound. It's not just about the individual who is struggling. It's about their families, their friends, their coworkers. It's about the strain on healthcare systems, the increase in crime rates, the loss of productivity. It's about the ripple effects that can be felt throughout entire communities. Yet despite its prevalence and impact, the understanding of alcohol and beverage addiction remains shrouded in mystery for many. What drives a person to drink excessively even when they know the potential consequences? Why can some people enjoy a casual drink without falling into the trap of addiction while others cannot? These questions lead us to the heart of the matter, the science behind addiction. This is where we begin to unravel the complex interplay of factors that contribute to addiction. It's not a simple equation, but a web of influences, each one exerting its own pull. The science behind addiction reveals a complex interplay of factors. And as we delve deeper into this topic, we hope to shed some light on this enigma, to foster understanding and, ultimately, to explore ways we can reduce the prevalence and impact of addiction. So, what exactly happens in our brains that makes us crave these beverages? Well, when we consume alcohol, it has a profound impact on our brain chemistry. Think of your brain as a complex machine, with billions of neurons communicating with each other through electrical signals. These signals are facilitated by chemicals known as neurotransmitters. Two of these neurotransmitters, dopamine and endorphins, play a crucial role in our relationship with alcohol. Dopamine is often called the feel-good neurotransmitter because it's responsible for feelings of pleasure and satisfaction. When we drink, alcohol triggers the release of dopamine in our brain's reward center, creating a sense of euphoria. This is why that first sip of your favorite drink at the end of a long day can feel so rewarding. Endorphins, on the other hand, are our body's natural painkillers. They help us cope with stress and discomfort. Alcohol also stimulates the release of endorphins, which can create a sense of relaxation and well-being. Now here's the catch. When our brain gets used to these dopamine and endorphin highs from drinking, it starts to crave them. This is the beginning of addiction. We start to associate alcohol with pleasure and relief, and our brain begins to desire it more and more. But that's not all. As we continue to drink, our brain adjusts to these increased levels of dopamine and endorphins. It begins to produce less of these neurotransmitters on its own, relying more on the alcohol to feel good. This means we need to drink more to get the same pleasure or relief we used to get from lesser amounts. It's a vicious cycle that can lead to heavy drinking and serious addiction. The science of addiction is complex and multifaceted, but understanding how alcohol affects our brain can help us comprehend why it's so easy to get hooked and so hard to quit. Over time, the brain adjusts to these highs, leading to the need for more alcohol to achieve the same effect. But addiction isn't just about the chemicals. There's a psychological aspect too. To truly understand addiction, we must examine the psychological factors at play. These can include stress, trauma, and mental health issues, and they can make individuals more susceptible to addiction. Let's start with stress. It's a common part of life, but when it becomes chronic, it can lead to harmful coping mechanisms. As stressors pile up, whether they're related to work, relationships, or personal issues, some people may turn to substances like alcohol as a way to escape, even if only momentarily. This temporary relief can quickly turn into dependency as the brain begins to associate the substance with stress relief. Trauma, too, plays a significant role in addiction. Traumatic experiences, especially those in early childhood, can have a lasting impact on an individual's mental health. This can lead to a vulnerability towards addiction, as individuals may use substances as a form of self-medication to numb the pain of their past experiences. Mental health disorders such as depression, anxiety, and bipolar disorder are also closely linked to addiction. These conditions can create a sort of double-edged sword scenario. On one hand, the struggle with mental health can lead individuals to self-medicate with addictive substances. On the other hand, the use of these substances can exacerbate mental health symptoms, creating a vicious cycle that can be difficult to break. It's important to note that these psychological factors don't necessarily cause addiction, but they can increase the risk. They can make the brain more receptive to the rewarding effects of substances, making it harder for individuals to resist them. Remember, addiction isn't a choice or a moral failing. It's a complex interplay of genetic, environmental, and psychological factors. By understanding the psychological aspects of addiction, we can better empathize with those who are struggling. We can recognize that their struggle isn't simply about willpower, but about dealing with underlying issues that make the pull of addiction stronger. Understanding the psychology of addiction can help us empathize with those struggling with it. The effects of addiction reach far beyond the individual. Addiction, whether to alcohol or other substances, isn't a solitary battle. It's a war waged on multiple fronts, affecting personal health, relationships, and society at large. Let's start with personal health. Substance addiction wreaks havoc on the human body. It's like a slow-acting poison, gradually chipping away at the body's defenses. Alcohol, for instance, can lead to liver disease and heart problems. Drug use can lead to a weakened immune system, lung damage, and even brain damage. And this doesn't even touch on the mental health implications such as depression and anxiety disorders, which often go hand in hand with addiction. Moving on to relationships, addiction often creates a ripple effect, with consequences that can be felt by friends, family, and loved ones. Trust is broken, bonds are strained, and in many cases, relationships are irreparably damaged. The emotional toll can be immense, leading to a cycle of guilt and shame that only fuels the addiction further. But the impact of addiction doesn't stop at the personal level. It extends outwards, infiltrating society at large. It contributes significantly to crime rates, with substance abuse often linked to both violent and nonviolent crimes. From petty theft to fund and addiction, to more serious offenses, the correlation cannot be ignored. And let's not forget the economic cost. Billions of dollars are spent annually on healthcare, law enforcement, and other societal costs related to addiction. This financial burden weighs heavily on the shoulders of society, diverting funds that could be better spent elsewhere. In essence, addiction is like a stone thrown into a pond. The initial splash may seem small, but the ripples it creates extend far and wide. It's a complex issue, one that cannot be overlooked or simplified. It's a societal issue that requires collective efforts to address. Addiction is a societal issue that requires collective efforts to address. Now that we understand why people get addicted, what can we do to reduce it? It's a question that brings us to the crux of the matter. How do we address and reduce addiction? The first step in combating addiction is prevention. It's about creating an environment that discourages the initiation of addictive behaviors. This might involve education and awareness campaigns to dispel myths and provide accurate information about the realities of addiction. It could also mean implementing policies that limit access to addictive substances, especially for young people who are particularly vulnerable. Treatment options come next. Once an addiction has taken hold, it's vital that individuals have access to effective treatment strategies. These might include medical interventions, such as medication-assisted treatment, which uses medicines to help alleviate withdrawal symptoms and reduce cravings. Behavioral therapies are also critical, helping individuals to change their thinking and behavior related to substance use. However, reducing addiction isn't just about the individual. It's also about providing support for those in recovery. This might involve creating community programs that offer advice and guidance, or it could mean providing resources for families and loved ones to help them understand and navigate the challenges of addiction. And let's not forget the importance of compassion and understanding. Too often, addiction is stigmatized and misunderstood. We need to remember that addiction is a disease, not a moral failing. Those suffering from addiction need our support, not our judgment. In the end, reducing addiction is a shared responsibility. It requires the collective efforts of individuals, families, communities, and society as a whole. It's about creating a culture that values health and well-being over quick fixes and temporary escapes. It's a challenging task, no doubt, but it's one that we're capable of taking on, and it's one that's worth every ounce of effort we put into it. Together, we can turn the tide on addiction and create a healthier, happier society.